A very good morning to you. Welcome to the Morning Brief right here on Channels Television. We're broadcasting live from Nigeria's Commercial Nerve Center, Lagos. I'm Jeffrey Ozama. Guys.
Well, it's Wednesday, July the 22nd.
Why do you like to count? I'm beginning to suspect
2026. Welcome to your perfect morning starter. I am Bukola Koka.
We are a network built on trust. I am Kelly Egiga. Good morning, guys.
And let's start with, I don't know whether the producer is ready with it. On my way here, there's an incident. I don't know what is going on with Kara. So two things. So yes, this is on my way to the office. I'll be able to catch this. So there's a trailer. I don't know what it's carrying, but it looks like bags of fertilizer. So you can see it fell over. Literally, it's just lucky that it didn't fall across the bridge. So you can see the guys offloading whatever is the content. Looks like fertilizer, some white. So I was just driving through to film this carefully, slowly. And so they see they've packed some of the things. So hopefully they'll be able to...
the side of the road.
Yeah, so if you look ahead of it, the road is free. But as you... Outbound Lagos, by the way, is outbound Lagos, just as you're getting onto Kara Bridge, on top of Kara Bridge, actually. So that's what's playing out. Again, Kelly did a fantastic job the other day to draw the attention of government to that portion, that expansion joint. But I don't know what the guys did. But the thing is getting back to what it was before. It's getting worse. So I don't know what caused this accident, but this is the state of Kara Bridge as we speak, 7:02. I just left there not too long ago. So maybe in the next few minutes or hours, they should be able to sort that out. But 2 points, this incident and that expansion joint that was not properly done.
Well, Jeff, we know how the response from the Ogun State government is always really, really very slow. I'm not sure if it's steady, but slow. So I'm not very optimistic that we'll get a swift response from the Ogun State axis of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Yes, I know the controller works and has sent his men to do some rehabilitation on that expansion joints there. But from what we hear and from what our colleagues who apply that routes often are saying is that it's back again to square one. So I mean, I think what was done was just maybe cement or concrete and just sand. And when the rains are here. It's been raining almost every day. And then the heavy duty trucks, you can see one of them on your screen. I think it's high time we get to do something about that bridge, because across, if you check that Kara Bridge to Long Bridge to the Arepo Bridge and Magboro, they all have something damaging along the expansion joints on those bridges. We have a serious maintenance culture in this part of the world, and we spend millions and millions of taxpayers' money to fix these roads. We also need to ensure that we try to maintain them for safety of Nigerians, please.
Well, you guys have said it all, and this is a route that is quite concerning for everyone, particularly on this side of the divide, and for millions of Nigerians who have drawn attention to the fact that it is an international route. And besides, Kara Bridge, the entire stretch of the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway requires attention, from the expansion joints to the lighting of the bridge to the sidebars on the bridge, which have consistently been vandalized. The other day that there was a serious traffic congestion that caused, drivers to drive against traffic, commuters to drive against traffic on the inbound Lagos portion of the bridge. It was actually as a result of a lighting stand falling over the outbound Lagos portion of the bridge. So this is a call, a very concerning clarion call to the Federal Maintenance Roads Agency and the Minister of Works, to prioritize the rehabilitation work on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, so that we do not return to the days where commuters would, make this road accommodation for hours overnight. We could also draw attention to the Lotto Bridge, which looks like anything could happen at any particular point in time. Whenever an articulated vehicle, drives beneath that Lotto portion of the bridge on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, commuters have their hearts in their mouth because it looks like anything could happen. That bridge is supposed to, I believe, go all the way to Ikorodu, but for some reason, it has been abandoned for, more than 4 years. It was begun during the administration of former President, God rest his soul, late Muhammadu Buhari. So the entire Lagos-Ibadan Expressway demands urgent rehabilitation attention.
Yeah, just a quick one before we go. So I saw the story yesterday at one of our dailies and one of the African online publishing site that Paul Biya is absent again. Paul Biya is the president of Cameroon. 93-year-old, he got elected for, is his 7th term? That is going to stay there for another 8 years. He's been president since the 80s. I don't know what I don't know what
that was before some people were born.
Yes, I don't know what
some people were
they say
on this table.
No, I was born before Biya became president. But it's just troubling to me that neighboring Cameroon, I don't know what they're practicing. This doesn't sound like democracy to me, because how are you electing a 92-year-old man? And it's the entire team from military to judiciary just full of old people, with respect to old people, by the way. But when you get to this age, just rest, go and retire. And they say he went on a private visit since June to Europe, and that's the last we heard. But this is not the first time Paul Biya is disappearing.
No.
So this man looks like he just wants to stay and exit whenever God calls him. But I think this is not good for Africa. Whenever I see this is why AU meetings just don't excite me, because I don't know what they discuss in these meetings. Anyway,
he has that tag of, internationally, he has that tag as an absentee president.
He visits his country.
So he visits his country. And I mean, it's such a shame. This is really very peculiar to the continent. I do not know why. And the reasons are not far-fetched. It is mainly and mostly for medical treatments abroad. Why can't you fix the health systems in your country? Why? You admire what you see in Spain, you admire what you see in Saudi Arabia, in the UK, in the US, in France. But then you always cannot replicate what you see and experience and enjoy in those countries, in your own country as the president. And since 1980, more than 40 years as being the president, you're unable to, well, look, I'm not, but this is a very peculiar story to the continent. In 2009 as well, Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, between 2009 until May 2010, when he would eventually pass on, sadly, we also experienced this. Months and months away in Saudi Arabia, receiving medical treatments. Muhammadu Buhari as well, a constant visitor to the UK. The current president, France, Nigeria, is his own preferred destination. And I'm just wondering, for how long? That's why sometimes I feel the world does not pay a lot of respect to Africa and the continent, because why can't they come here for tourism? There are stories of people coming to University of Ibadan some many years ago to come learn and see how the university was being run and managed. But today the reverse is the case, guys.
Well, I have been reading in the last 8 hours or so that the ruling party is saying that continued absence, borders on continuity in governance, the lack of it, and hence, a vacancy should be declared, but the ruling party is arguing against the position expressed by the opposition party, saying that it doesn't constitute an absence in governance. And so you wonder about public institutions in Africa. Kelly, you were talking about, how this pattern does not command respect from the international community for Africa. Well, that is not very far from the truth. We've been talking about xenophobic attacks in South Africa, and rightly so, we should condemn it. But what about the situation back home that compels the push factor of migration? Have we addressed those issues? And so that begs the question about developmental issues back home that, create a state of disillusionment for many Africans back home, and then they seek greener pastures at home. This classic example in Cameroon is one that suffices at this particular point in time. Recall the election that brought Paul Biya back was marred by violence, and many were wondering why even opposition candidates were in the very old age brackets in that country
I don't know what the
as
young
well.
people are doing.
So, Africa, which way? We could go on and on about this, but I guess we have very compelling issues also to review today.
I don't know whether we have, Africa has to pull off what you call maybe hard acceptance or soft acceptance in this case, like they did with Zimbabwe and Robert Mugabe. Mugabe did not want, what happened to Mugabe was technically cool, but everybody like, okay, this coup is cool. Technically,
Go ahead.
I'm not saying they should go and use coup and take him out, but the man is old. Let's say what it is. He can't even walk properly. There's nothing wrong with getting old, but when you get to that age, exit the stage. And anyway, let's get to the papers. But by the way, just before we jump to the papers, another round of bidding. We understand that the one companies have been able to get about 36 blocks of oil blocks, which is about out of the 50. So we even have frontier basins now, even part of it, because oil block is like having OPIC estate. Then the oil field is like having an estate inside.
OPIC estate?
Inside. So this OPIC area can be a block. Then you have fields, like different estates you have. And then the well is different buildings. That's the most simplistic way. But when you get all of these licenses and get this bonus, it doesn't guarantee anything until you get it. So exploration will start, and then if the oil comes out, well, at these marginal fields. The most impressive part is that even frontier basins like Benue Trough, Lake Chad, and all of these were bidded for. So those ones you're not too sure. But I believe that we're more of a gas nation than an oil nation. But let's see how this plays out, because we need all the production we can get to ramp up our numbers.
And does it mean, by the way, a shoring up of our crude oil production output?
Yeah, that's also that. So, for instance, for Bonga now, Bonga has 3 fields. So we have the one that is developed already, which is the main Bonga, and then the Bonga North, I think, is still developed. So this one is an FPS. So the other one is maybe a tieback. I think there's a FID, Final Investment Decision. I think it's concluded also for Bonga Southwest. So that should, Bonga itself, for instance, as an example, can give us another 450 million barrels per day. So if you have all these
450 million or
sorry,
1,000.
50,000. I'm sorry. That's the one. So if we have all these fields and they're able to get oil, eventually we'll get to the numbers. But
all right.
So
if that would translate to affordability.
But it's going to be years from now. It doesn't just happen overnight. Okay. No. It's not like next. Sometimes not even like the next 3 years. So it takes a while.
There's very little reason to celebrate at this point in time.
No, but at least there's an interest.
Reason,
we're making money from the bonus first. Let's put that one in our pockets.
Well, if it also translates into accountability, because there's scrutiny on that particular sector. But we'll take a moment. When we return, it'll be time to look into the papers. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Ms. Ayo Akaraya is our guest, is a member of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. Ms. Akaraya, good to see you and good morning. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, absolutely, Geoffrey, Bukola and Kelly, good morning. A pleasure to be here.
Before I drag you onto the papers, I can't wait to hear your thoughts on Paul Biya. He's been president since I was 2 years old. I'm in my mid-40s.
I mean, well, yeah, I mean, this is just what goes on in Africa. Paul Biya, as you said, yes, I was quite young. I'm over 60 now, and I was in early secondary school when I started hearing about Paul Biya as president of Cameroon. And for every election cycle, I think they've done about 7 elections now, and I keep winning all the elections. All right, that's a francophone country. It's our neighbor right on the east coast, just by Akwa Ibom and Cross River State. You know, it's really, each time I remember the story of Cameroon and the kind of democracy that is practiced in Cameroon, I just wonder. And of course, you should also not forget that because of the absence of inclusive and participatory democracy that is supposed to be transparent, that is supposed to involve every region, you know, of Cameroon, the southern part of Cameroon, which is the Anglophone-speaking part of Cameroon, they speak English there, while the northern part, they speak mostly French. They've opted to break away from Cameroon. I think that is just a mark of frustration. But overall, it's time for Paul Biya, to quit the stage. He's done quite well so far. There's some measure of stability in the country. but there's no development in Cameroon. Nobody can account for the huge oil and gas resources that that country produces. It's basically a very poor country, you know. So it's really unfortunate that he hangs on there. Once elections are over, I don't even want to call this election. Once the cycle of selecting a president is over, in which case he always emerges, he returns to Sweden. I understand he's been living in Sweden all his life. So that is where we are in Africa. Zimbabwe was the closest to what Cameroon is doing now with Robert Mugabe. You know, Robert Mugabe was a very interesting character to me with his great African proverbs, and that tends to create a lot of hilarious, you know, for everyone who listens to him speak. You know, he engaged the British. He does not like the Western-style democracy and all of that. Well, that's where we are, as I said earlier. It's unfortunate that Cameroon is caught in this this trap that appears to be an unending sound. It's not going to end so soon. Maybe the man wants to die on the throne, but if he does that, that would be very tragic. The story of Cameroon is not a good example of democracy.
All right, I needed your thoughts on that. Let's go to this Nigeria, the first paper I'll be looking at. Two stories I want you to binge on. CBN keeps interest rate at 26.5% amid global tensions. MPC ignores easing inflation, keeps tight policy over Middle East tensions. Cardoso says reform strengthen economy once external shocks remain potent. And then the one beneath, which is a page 16 read, Africa tops global hunger rankings as UN sounds warning. So despite, you know, when the interest rate was, no, the CPI, the inflation numbers were literally jumping, the interest rate kept accelerating. Now we are in the region of 15%. Interest rates, the CBN doesn't trust, I don't know whether it doesn't trust the numbers, because you look at interest rate and employment numbers to be able to respond as a monetary authority. What do you make of it?
Well, I don't expect the CBN to do anything different. It's keeping the interest rate at 26.5%. It's high. You know, we are still talking about double-digit interest rate, which of course is affecting investment, it's affecting production, it's also affecting even the cost of living, as it were, borrowings. How can we grow the SMEs, MSMEs, when the interest rate is that high? So you go to the banks and then you try to get a loan for any kind of investment, and you look at the current interest rate, it's extremely very high. It's one of the highest in the world. But again, if you look at the value of the naira to the dollar at the moment, there's very little the CBN can do, and I think that it is just to keep the economy a bit stable by stabilizing the interest rate at that level. I think this is about the second or third time that interest rate has been maintained by the CBN. For me, that is there's no way the CBN can drive the interest rate low at this point because we are not really producing in this country. Basically, we are importing all of what we need, apart from oil and gas that the country exports, that is bringing in forex. And with the crisis in the Middle East, the war between the United States and Iran over control of the choke point, the Strait of Hormuz, you know, which Iran and Oman actually owns. They jointly own that important strait, which controls about 25% of global trade, you know, that transits through that strait. So that's why we are not producing anything, as I said earlier, and there's no way. It's maintaining the interest rate at that level is just a form of trying to keep everything stable for now, while the CBN observes other economic indices at the macro level. I should also add, interestingly, just last week, I guess, Cardoso was in the UK, where he was honored as with an award of the Central Bank of the Year governor. So it means that he's doing well if you look at that global recognition that came to him. So overall, with unified regime of the currency that we have, which of course still keeps the exchange rate at over 1,000, hovering now between 1,350 and 1,450, depending on where you are exchanging. So Well, we wait and see, but I think it is impacting on our capacity to grow the informal sector. You know, because the informal sector will rely on borrowings and loans from banks, which the repayment method or the repayment funds is high. It's not easy for struggling Nigerians who are trying to cope with other contending factors like electricity, infrastructure, and all of that, and then you have to pay that kind of money as interest for loans collected. So, as I said, that is impacting on our capacity to develop the informal sector.
Well, you touched on you know, the relationship between activities in the banking sector and the petroleum sector. Speaking of which, The Guardian captures some of our thoughts this morning on, the winners of NUPRC's 2025 licensing bid. And let me go over the comprehensive captions from The Guardian, front page of The Guardian. 4 years after 1 billion barrels frontier basin's discovery, FG shops for investors as NNPC's $3 billion North Oil exploration lags. So it looks like a mixed bag, but what are your thoughts on the NUPRC's licensing bid for which winners have emerged? And after all, the discovery of oil in some parts of the south, in some parts of the north, where are we, Mr. Akiria?
The story of oil discovery in Nigeria that started in 1958 in Oloibiri, present-day Bayelsa State, is very interesting. It strikes a lot of interest because, one, if you look at it, over time, that is well over 60 years now, we particularly in the last administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, I learned, we were relished with the reports that oil had been discovered somewhere in Bauchi State, and of course in other parts of the north. Billions of naira were invested in trying to grow the discoveries of those oil wells to commercial capacity, but nothing was heard about them. So for me, this is good news, but as somebody from the Niger Delta, I am not happy because we want to see transparency in these bidding rounds. Who are those that have won these bids? There were about 50 or so, 50 or thereabout, and then 30 is up now. 30 has been bidded for, and they won. We want to see those who won these fresh rounds of bids for the oil wells. How many Niger Delta people are there? I read a report this morning where PANDEF is actually complaining. The Pan Niger Delta Forum is complaining bitterly that Niger Deltans, on whose backyard, on whose soil a lot of these oil and gas resources are found, are usually shut out from these bidding rounds. So we have the big players from other parts of the country usually winning these rounds. As somebody from the region, I think that is not good. I think that was what also led to the agitations by men, movement for the emancipation of Niger Delta. Though basically that struggle was about, environmental pollution and economic inequilibrium. The complaint at the time was that Niger Deltans are being shortchanged. But with the 13% derivation also going to governors in the region, there is also a growing call for greater accountability and transparency in how the 13% derivation from oil is also spent by leaders in the region. So whilst we try to ask for more, there is also a need to ask for internal scrutiny and transparency and accountability in what we're getting. But basically, I think that, in my view, those who won these bid rounds, we want to see them, the companies, the individuals behind them, and see whether it reflects the growing demand by Niger Deltans to have a bite on the national cake.
Mr. Kereha, well, we'll stay with the issue of accountability and transparency, but this time we'll switch gears to the Nigerian Tribune. It leads with that story that's doesn't seem to go away. PFIPC scandal. ONSA SGF disowned Adeyemi during 2025 inquiry, Foreign Affairs Ministry. Well, that's the Office of the National Security Advisor and that of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. The Foreign Affairs Ministry says both offices disowned Adeyemi during the 2025 inquiry. Reps to meet Minister of Justice, Accountant General today. So, well, since both offices have denied Adeyemi or disowned Adeyemi, as the Foreign Affairs Ministry have said, I'm just wondering, so who exactly is behind Adeyemi?
This report broke yesterday when the House of Reps invited the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and other key individuals involved in answering questions about the ongoing investigation by the House of Reps Committee on probing the Presidential Foreign Investment Promotion Council, run by this gentleman now who is appearing to be, well, I don't want to, the matter is being investigated, and I hope at some point it will go to court. If it is proven that indeed he was acting alone, then he should get an award as the greatest con man of the century. I mean, for anybody to pull this off, across agencies, key agencies of government, at the highest level of bureaucracy and government in Nigeria, that is not only an embarrassment, but it simply shows how weak our institutions have become. But I must also commend the Foreign Affairs Ministry, for blowing the whistle on him. If not for the diligence and, the capacity of, senior officials at the Foreign Affairs Ministry to properly scrutinize, correspondences between the Foreign Affairs Ministry and the PFIPC, then of course maybe this would have continued, and eventually the 1.3 billion naira that has already gone through the budget, that was already approved by the National Assembly and assented to by the President, and eventually the money would have got into the pocket of Prince Adeni Matthew Adeyemi. I read the report, and apart from the fact that the Office of the National Security Advisor is, at a point last year, 2025, actually declared that this body is illegal. And I think that is what the committee of the House of Reps is trying to find out now. The ONSA office wrote back to the Foreign Affairs Ministry that that agency is illegal. So what did Nuhu Ribadu do? What then happened? If at that level of government, that is the National Security Advisor's office, you are able to find that a key agency of government is illegal, at that point I would have thought that the ONSA office would have moved in to arrest even Prince Adeyemi before what has happened. So I see a whole lot of lapses here and there. The Office of the Chief of Staff also wrote to in a reply to the Foreign Affairs Ministry denying the existence of that agency. So why did all of them keep quiet when they realized that that agency was fraudulently set up? It was not supposed to exist in the first place, but yet it ran up until this year, put in for budget allocation. The budget was approved, and the office was given, and all of that. So there's a whole lot. By now, I expect some heads to be rolling, even before the investigation is concluded, for even the lapses itself, which of course has presented a whole lot of embarrassment to the image of Nigeria within and outside of the country. It's so unfortunate.
Yeah, Mr. Zakaria, this scandal is what we're watching closely. But some of us were watching to see that this is not the only guy that will take the fall, because it's too sophisticated for one person to be able to pull off. I think it would be poor work on the side of the ICPC from Nigerians to see if this is the only guy that is responsible for this act. Then I don't think the ICPC would have done a great job. Then the first place, what will even come out of it? But at least let's see the people that are part of this whole mess that has embarrassed this government. Mr. Zakaria, thank you, sir, for coming on the program. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right, we have lineup of conversations for you on the program. First up, there's a lot going on as far as this investigation is concerned by the ICPC. We have loads of asset forfeiture that we've also experienced lately by the courts, forfeiting some of the property of people that are politically exposed, as well as this craze for building judges' houses. Here's on Wike is at the vanguard of it. He started it in Rivers, he took it to Abuja. We understand 25 billion has been earmarked by the Imo State government as well. And I think Akwa Ibom State is also building judges' quarters. Why are governors loving to build judges' quarters? All of this is part of the conversation. I'll also have one of the persons who contested in the election of the NBA later on in the program, plus the state of the economy. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
Only on Channels Television.
Welcome back to the program, everyone. Let's get to have that conversation this hour. We are joined by Richard Ahonaruogo. He's a senior advocate of Nigeria. He joins us live on the program. Inibege Effiong is also going to join us very shortly on the show as well. He's caught up in traffic. But senior advocates, we have to begin this conversation with the story that has refused to go, the PFIPC scandal. The latest is that the chief of staff to the president, Mr. Femi Gbajabiamila, has honored the invitation by the ICPC. In the papers, of course, as well, just a moment ago, we were just discussing this, and the fact that the Office of the National Security Advisor, the Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation have disowned Ademi. But there's a question around transparency in all of this. What do you say?
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for inviting me. I believe that the scandal is something that Nigerians are interested in getting to the bottom. And I believe the government has done well by taking the initiative of inviting persons to come and explain their roles in respect of what is happening relating to the office that is said not to have existed. What we have heard so far shows that a lot more needs to be done, and I believe that the ICPC will live up to its billing.
I'm not sure. This sounds really very optimistic from you, SN, about the ICPC. But how about the fact that maybe perhaps Nigerians would have loved to see how this hearing or investigations is ongoing? I mean, what is obtainable in other parts of the world? Would it have been possible for Nigerians to perhaps see how Mr. Gbajabiamila, interacted with the ICPC officials?
I believe that that is not possible. The ICP setting is not a public setting. When investigations are going on, they don't invite members of the public. It's like the police. When the police suspect somebody has done something, they invite the person to his office, and the person makes a statement, and if they believe that it's something that is, a confession, they look at what they ought to do, put it on recording, get the person's lawyer to be present when the person is making the statement. And then afterwards, they look at the papers and see whether they have a prima facie case to prosecute. At the stage of investigation, it's not a matter of the public coming in to hear the details of what any person is saying, be it the accused or the person that is saying, I was given an office, and the people that say, no, we don't know you. At this stage, whatever they are saying still remains confidential to the ICPC to the extent that they do not wish to jeopardize the investigation. So I believe it is proper that they should carry out a proper and thorough investigation. And that's what Nigerians expect from them.
Senior advocate, so let's look at what is fact. Because this case, on one hand, is being investigated by the ICPC. There's a hearing in the House of Representatives. There's a court proceeding going on. So there's a lot of public interest. So the fact available is that this man had an office. This man started the process of opening an account. There were discrepancies in reporting from the presidency to the accountant general's office. One is saying he had an account, the other one is saying it wasn't complete, and everybody's trying to pass the buck. Even the office space now, people are shifting grounds. I think the head of service, according to what we read, saying that that place is actually allocated to the office of the secretary to the government of the federation. So everybody's trying to run away from one responsibility or the other. So From your point of view as a lawyer, no matter what happens, which offices must have some level of accountability, or somebody fired, somebody suspended? So I'm talking here from the office of the Attorney General, not Attorney General, my mistake, Chief of Staff, Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Accountant General, Central Bank, the Presidency itself, and even the National Assembly.
You have mentioned every organ that is interested in this matter and every organ that ought to be interested in this matter. It is yet to be seen what level of participation they will be seen to have played in the establishment or non-establishment of the said office. I think it would be presumptuous that we should think that it's a role. Let us get the report. If the report comes out and Nigerians are not satisfied, Nigerians will cry out. This is not the first time that we're having such inquiries. Let us get the report. I believe that most of the offices that you have mentioned are crippled by very reasonable persons, and I believe that they will do the best to give Nigerians the truth and nothing but the truth. At the end of the day, we'll see what is happening. And the journalists like you have been giving us information. We have been reading the report from the head of service from the CBN, and these are just snippets of what is happening. So when they collate everything together, we'll be able to read between the lines and see whether a thorough job has been done. But for now, I think we have to be patient.
Without presuming, yes, Senior Advocate, without
step, because yes, Nigerians are anxious to knowing the truth.
Yes, Senior Advocate, without presuming, because I don't want to go to the court part, I'm focused on the ICPC. Since it's not a subject under adjudication, that's why we have the leverage to talk about it. My direct question, because it has a budgetary allocation, whether it was earmarked or funds were released, it's a different kettle of fish. But it found its way to a national budget, not in the ministry, in the presidency. That's serious. So would it be fair if at the end of this man is the only one that goes down for what has happened?
I don't think it will be fair, and I don't think he will be the only one. And I don't even think, it's not necessary for us to presume. But it will not be fair if it's the only one, because the National Assembly is there. There are checks and balances. There are ways in which budgets are prepared, sent to the National Assembly, scrutinized by committees, hearings are heard, appropriations are made, the president, it is passed in the House of Representatives and the Senate, then it is harmonized and the figure is arrived at and is taken to the presidency. The presidency has its own review mechanism to see that, yes, these items are the items that, but people don't let us presume. I do not want to say people do make mistakes, or it may be deliberate falsehood, or it may be a deliberate crime. So for now, it is best to just presume that the ICPC and other organs of government entitled to look into this matter will look into this matter and give us honest reports in respect of it. Thank you.
And we hope that we're able to reconcile the reports of the outcome of the investigation by the House of Representatives and that of the ICPC, such that, every detail checks out and the right people that ought to be brought to book brought to justice. But so many matters, at the front burner of national politics get our attention this morning. And I'd like you to speak to what we see to be the anti-corruption war resulting in trends in assets forfeiture. So either it's the former Attorney General of the Federation, or businesswoman Aisha Chimugu, or the former CBN governor, were hearing reports of assets forfeiture to the tune of billions of naira. Some, in fact, dollars in cash have been forfeited, final forfeiture declared. And at the House of Representatives yesterday, a certain honorable is raising a motion for the documenting by location, by value of assets that have been forfeited since 1999. And many Nigerians are asking, assets are being forfeited, but where is the money going to? What are your thoughts on this?
Thank you. Before I answer this question, let me just say that it is commendable that the House of Representatives is taking on this issue of the PFIPC, because that is a more open investigation. More members of the public are entitled to view and listen to the committees sitting, and I believe that will also checkmate, any underhand games that may be coming up in respect of this matter, because the House of Representatives is open to the public. at least open to members and those that are invited to the place, including the press. So I believe that we'll get a good report. In respect of officials, because I believe that I advocate criminal justice advocacy and I'm involved in some of these matters, it may not be very fair for me to speak on forfeitures and what is happening in that realm, because I practice actively in the realms of criminal justice advocacy.
Well, senior advocates, I mean, these issues are really, really very interesting and critical for many Nigerians. And I mean, it would have been interesting to see just how...
Because I have one or two personal matters involving some of these forfeitures, so it might not be in my own interest or in the interest of my clients to make public comments on it. But I believe that so far, what the courts have been doing is commendable. Thank you.
All right. Maybe let's touch on this craze for building houses for judges. I'm not sure particularly why it has become such a common practice now, but like Jeff mentioned earlier, Nyesom Wike is one of those who have had to start. He began this whole idea, and now the Akwa Ibom State governor, the Imo State governor as well. But my question to you would be, why exactly is the executive arm of government patronizing the judiciary?
I believe that building houses for judges is wrong. I believe it has no place in the Constitution. I believe that the judiciary is independent, and this government has come out clearly to state that the judiciary will have their budgetary allocations released on the first line charge, which means that money that appropriated to the judiciary, both at the state or federal level, should be given to them. So if these things are important to the judiciary, it should be itemized in their budget. And if it's passed by either the National Assembly or the various houses of assembly, then those monies haven't been properly appropriated, should be released on the first line charge for these houses and other things that are required for the comfort of judicial officers to be provided, not by the executive, but by the judiciary as provided for in the budget, which is the law.
Yeah, Senior Advocate, well said. Let us see, we'll come back to you in just a moment. Second guest, Inibe Effiong just joined us, your colleague. Inibe, welcome to the program. We've touched on a couple of things because we wanted to binge through some of the things that Nigerians have been commenting on, which we're now at the issue of this new love for building judges' houses. I have the privilege of entering some of these houses when I was in Port Harcourt, and I'm telling you for a fact, it's a dream home. You literally have to just come with your clothes, literally, because everything is there. So I covered it properly in Rivers State, both for the Court of Appeal, President of the Court of Appeal there in Rivers, I think the Court of Appeal there, and then the judges, some of those judges in Rivers State, Naguma quarters also. So I understand firsthand the quality of these houses. And these guys are human beings. So people are uncomfortable. But they said there's nothing wrong with it. What do you make of this building houses for judges? The Leonard Sake has given his own. He said he doesn't agree with it. But what's your thought?
I believe the challenge that some people have is the procedure. You cannot have an independent and efficient judiciary if you do not provide the logistics, the resources, and the appropriate incentive that will enable judges to discharge their constitutional responsibilities without being encumbered by the things that they need to function properly. There is a consensus, at least within the legal profession, the majority of members of the legal profession, that the judiciary over the years have not been well catered for. There are judges in Nigeria today who are paying judicial assistance from their own pockets. There are judges in Nigeria today that are dealing with very serious issues relating to welfare. As a matter of fact, it is even worse at the magistracy. You mentioned Akwa Ibom. For a number of years, magistrates who were appointed in my state were taking Okada and tricycle to court. And this is the situation in many states of the Federation. So what we have seen is that the executive arm of government are basically weaponizing the welfare of judges. They have realized that they have not taken responsibility to ensure that within the permissible constitutional framework, that what is due to the judiciary is afforded to it. Because if you look at the provisions of the Constitution, Section 146, Section 162, Section 121, and other relevant sections relating to distributable pool accounts under the Constitution, any amount standing to the credit of the judiciary ought to be paid to the relevant organs of the judiciary, namely, supposed to go to the National Judicial Council, for example. But what we see is that the governors choose, and the executive arm of government directly choose to make it look like they are doing judges a favor. Have you wondered, why is it that when governors purchase vehicles for commissioners, they don't make news out of it? Have Nigerians asked those questions? Why is it that when heads of parastatals of the executive are given vehicles, we do not see ceremony, we do not see the press being invited? Oh, come and see, oh, the governor is sharing vehicles to commissioners today. Why is it only with judges? Why is it that when it comes to the issue of accommodation for judicial officers, it becomes a sensational matter? The blame lies squarely at the foot of the executive arm of government. What they are doing, quite certainly, is to characterize judges as if judicial officers are at their mercy. That is not supposed to be the case. These are provisions, these are facilities that members of the judiciary are entitled to as a matter of right. But what they are doing is to make it seem as if they are doing them a favor. And in that process, they hope, for some of them, maybe to be seen to be in the good book of the judiciary. But I want to insist that we must address the issue of welfare of judges.
But Mr. Effiong, Leonard Silk, Mr. Femi Falana had raised the matter of equity amid this love for building quarters, accommodation for the judiciary. His point was that why doesn't the executive also, construct same for professors, the academia, who are also a very important part, of the system? And doesn't it also bother on independence of the judiciary? With this trend by state governors and even the executive, can we guarantee an independent judiciary? Don't forget that the executive at the federal level had addressed the matter of remuneration for members of the judiciary not long after he came into office.
I mean, as I have made the point, that there are legitimate concerns regarding procedure. The point of the Leonard Senior Advocate is understood. What I am saying is that when you appoint a judex, when a judge, or a magistrate, or a justice of the appellate court is appointed, what is taking place is that you are reposing in the judicial officer the sacred responsibility of administering justice without fear of favor. I am making the point that for that responsibility to be discharged efficiently, the facilities for the efficiency of that responsibility have to be provided. It is about procedure for some of us. So, if you look at, for example, a high court judge in a state, a high court judge who is required to function, or a federal judge, whether at the federal or state level, that is required to function, does not have a decent accommodation, place to live, may not even have the right vehicle to use to go to work, or does not have the needed assistance to assist in research. What do you think, what do you expect to happen? It is not an excuse for corruption. I am saying that you cannot have an independent judiciary when you do not provide the resources that judges require. However, the executive arm of government have made it a pedestrian issue by going about it in a manner suggestive that maybe we are doing the judges a favor. I am saying that is not supposed to be the case.
All right. All right. Let's bring in Senior Advocate of Nigeria again, Mr. Richard, who is live for us in the U.S. And thank you indeed, because the time difference is really much, but you have to stay awake to join us on the program. So I'm not sure what is obtainable in the U.S., SAN. My direct question again to you would be, because you do not support that idea, if you were a beneficiary of one of these quotas, would you accept it or decline? And perhaps my last question would be, what happens to those quotas when the judges are retired?
Exactly, because that is the point. You cannot be building quotas and personalize them. I believe that judicial officers have their terms of engagement, and when they retire, they're supposed to retire according to their engagement. So we must look at the terms of engagement of the judicial officers. Are they entitled to personal houses upon retirement? And if so, is it the houses that are being built for them, even by the judiciary themselves? Let's forget the executive arm. What my position is that the judiciary needs to be properly catered for. The budget for the judiciary should be such that it will be sufficient for them to carry out their duties in terms of emoluments and welfare, etc., etc. And it's important to note, sir, if I may say so with respect, that it was when I was secretary of the bar of the NBA Keja between 1996 to 1998 that we did a report on the welfare of judges in Lagos State. And then the Chief Justice Priscilla Kuye now became the person that advised Governor Tinubu at that time to implement that report. And that was where the welfare of judges began, because that was where we started giving different packages, apart from the emoluments for robes, etc., etc. So the president is back in power again. He had a better opportunity for them to see that the welfare of judges are properly catered for, but they must go through the judicial arm. It should not be an executive largesse for the judiciary. The judiciary should come up with what they need, put it in the budget, get the National Assembly to pass it, and then implement it for their welfare. I do not believe that if the houses are meant for them after retirement, it should be meant for them. But if it's not part of their emolument, then of course they cannot have it as part of their retirement payment. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I do not know what happens in the United States because I don't practice here. Thank you.
but it's not said if he was going to accept or not.
Well, let us say, let's because of time, I'll just be sharing time. However, I know that because you're asking about what happens, I know that when Nyesom Wike was building in River State, the term was, from what I covered and understood, was only judges will live in that quarters. So, for instance, if a judge retires, says, and the judge passes on, the children can't inherit that property. They will give you the value, the financial value of that, because they just want judges to live there. I don't know whether that has changed, but to the best of my knowledge, this is a fantastic building, by the way, by every stretch of it, because I covered it. But let's talk about something else before we wrap up the conversation, and that has to do with, I know you didn't comment on assets forfeiture because you were not here, so you talk about that. But in addition to that, it's about a year to the end of this 10th National Assembly. Yes. I want your overview of this, we call it the Akpabio Senate. Some have criticized him they said Lawan was a rubber stamp. Akpabio has doubled down to double rubber stamp. They have pushed back that they can't be fighting with the executive, that they are just doing their job. What do you make of it before I come to Leonard?
Akpabio never had the aspiration to be in the 10th Senate. He wanted to be the president of Nigeria. He fell in his aspiration to get the ticket of the APC at the convention. He surreptitiously found his way to the National Assembly. That is why he has been governing surreptitiously. It is garbage in, garbage out. This is a man, and you know, for some of what is a bit personal. He was my governor for 8 years. So you will expect that the information I have about him, the things I know about his modus operandi, may be a bit deeper than Nigerians who have not experienced Akpabio. What do you expect? This is a man that has zero tolerance for dissent as governor. So when you have a National Assembly that will embarrassingly and shamelessly change the national anthem of a country without a national conversation, national anthem without a national debate, you don't do that. That was an act of legislative abomination. That you will have 109 senators. You have 360 members of the House of Reps. Arrogate to themselves the power to alter one of the most significant symbols of our country without a debate without an opportunity for input from those who are supposed, they are asking me now and you to sing a national anthem, recite the national anthem, that we did not participate in reintroduction. You look at the Senate that consistently approves almost every nominee of the president without interrogation. A Senate that has abdicated the very sacred responsibility of parliamentary oversight. A Senate that since Akpabio became the president, we have not seen one, I challenge you, one outstanding parliamentary inquiry that has resulted in the indictment of members of the executive arm of government, either for corruption or ineptitude. This has been a Senate of cover-ups. A Senate that has become notorious for approval of questionable loans without question. A Senate that approved the state of emergency in Rivers State. Till date, that same National Assembly has not had the decency to inquire into how the funds that the so-called sole administrator spent while in office. This is the worst in my lifetime. And it is not surprising to us, because the whole idea of the Miloko, that you have people wear the Tinubu cap, stand on the floor of the National Assembly, raise their hand shamelessly, seeking on your mandate we shall stand. What was their mandate? It was supposed to be a legislative mandate. It was supposed to be a mandate to make laws for the good of the country. A mandate to investigate infractions in the country. But what have they arrogated to themselves? They have told Nigerians, we are not here to serve your interests. We are here to serve Asiwaju. We will serve Asiwaju from the beginning to the end. And that explains why at every point, this National Assembly has been very shameless. Look at what has happened with the so-called fake agency, Presidential Council.
That would be a strong word for the institution.
No, do you know what they said? They said, no, we cannot investigate it. We do not.
But the House of Reps is investigating.
I'm talking, why is the Senate not investigating? Do you believe something will come out of what is going on in the House of Reps? We know what some of these inquiries are about. Look, there may be a few decent people, there are a few decent people in the National Assembly. But to the extent of the issue of leadership, to the extent that even their own budget, you, as you are talking to me now in the media, Channels TV cannot show me the budget of the National Assembly today. What do you expect?
I'll find it.
Please, find it and show it to Nigeria. I am making the point.
There's a provision
I am making the point.
Breakdown, I'll find it.
That the solution to our national crisis, the crisis of leadership, is not spiritual. These are human beings who have resolved. I call them, you know what I call them? You know what I call them?
Please don't say anything that will put us in trouble.
No, I'm not saying it. I'm saying these are people, fatalistic political class. They have resolved that would rather die than allow the country move forward. Right. If we are going to change the current direction of our country, we need to really look at the character of people in the National Assembly. But for Nigerians who are expecting magic from Akpabio, I'm sorry to break your heart, it's not going to happen. They will only get worse and worse and worse by the day.
Yeah. Well, you didn't speak to the assets for future. I don't know, maybe.
Quickly, how come?
So that we can get to the
that it is possible to live in a country where they are telling us that a former chief law officer of Nigeria was able to acquire how many? Almost 30 or 40 houses?
50.
They got about,
how many houses can Malami sleep in a night?
They got 40.
Let's not talk about the forfeiture. How was it possible for him to acquire these assets? And that is why I must commend the EFCC chairman on that point, to the extent that they were able to search those assets, recover them. But the Nigerian people must ask a question. How was it possible? How is it tenable in a country that people cannot feed? In a country that people are sleeping under the bridge? That one person is able to acquire this kind of property.
All right.
It is simply insane what is going on in our country.
All right. Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Richard, please, I want you to just weigh in on this very quickly as we round off on the conversation this morning. The 10th National Assembly, led by Godswill Akpabio, is, right here on the spotlight this morning. But he's just one man out of 109.
No, I think the National Assembly is more than the Senate. The National Assembly is the Senate and the House of Representatives. So although my learned friend is entitled to his view, and his view are particularly in respect of the Senate President, I do not share those views with him. I believe, by and large, the National Assembly has done fairly well. They have made some laws that are very good for the country, and they are making other laws that, if implemented, will be very good for the country, especially the Police Act, which is being amended to allow for state police. I was in a committee with Chief Williams, who was chairman of that committee. OCG Okosha is alive. He was a member of that committee. And I think it was set up by Chief Wole Oladipeku as president. And we took a memorandum to Chief Olusegun Obasanjo. One of the things in that position paper was that of state police and true federalism. And I believe that National Assembly, the steps that are taken will see to some of these points that have been agitating Nigerians for a long time. We can look at the little matters and the areas where people disagree with them. But by and large, the National Assembly has been stable and there's been no crisis in the National Assembly. I think that is good for Nigeria. The less crisis we have in the National Assembly, the better for us. The oversight functions, yes, they can do it better, and we hope that they will get better with it. Thank you.
We're totally out of time, so let's be clear that the comments you made are exclusively yours, so that you don't put us...
I like the latest for the point he has made.
So that,
but the Police Act was passed in 2020. The current National Assembly is seeking to establish state police. What is the national conversation that is going on? Channels TV should fact-check me. There is no organ today in Nigeria at the state level that is functioning. Not the State Independent Electoral Commission, not local government.
When you say
I am saying there is no conventional organ at the state level that the governors have allowed to function.
Okay, that's a better way to put it.
Not the state INEC, not local governments. There is none. Not even state houses of assembly.
But some states could argue that, you know, some local governments are functioning.
Where?
Like Lagos.
Where? Like Lagos, they will say their locations get to them. And
I am saying, well, you want to cite Lagos? We have to look at the facts. I am telling you today that governors have become constitutional vandals. When you want to give governors state police, Nigerians should be wary. Nigerians should be wary. Some of us may not be able to go back home. My governor today is targeting everybody that is speaking against him.
That's another allegation.
I am saying to you that this state police, we must put the necessary safeguards in place so that they don't become state militia. Let us not dismiss this issue.
Yeah, there are these concerns. So, however, so let's put it out. You've made a lot of allegations, even against the National Assembly. I'm sure maybe you invite Senator Daramodu, the spokesperson, and their spokesperson to come and respond as well. So we're clear on.
No, but there are facts that can be verified.
No, it's okay.
We're absolutely here. I understand that SCN is also itching to respond to this, but we have to anchor at this point. We are
maybe give the Lennon 30 seconds. I don't know.
Let's say, well. Yeah, go ahead, sir. Maybe in 20 seconds or less.
The position I spoke about the state police is a position that has been canvassed several years ago when Chief Olusegun Obasanjo was the president, led by Chief Williams. We went to Aso Rock and presented a redrafted constitution, which, as a draft, which included the state police. I'm not just talking of Tinubu or Buhari. No, I'm saying as far back as 1999. The NBA position is that we need the state police. When we get to it, Nigerians must walk towards it. Thank you.
Thank you indeed for your time and your insights on the program. Richard Ahonaruogo is a senior advocate of Nigeria. He has joined us live from the US. And here in the studios, we've had a constitutional lawyer and human rights activist, Inibege Effiong. Thank you indeed, gentlemen, for your time on the program.
Thank you.
Well, this is the morning brief. Let's take a moment now. We'll be back. We'll get to continue somehow with the legal sector in Nigeria here, but to something else. It has to do with the NBA elections. We're back in just a moment. Please stay with us.
Welcome back, and we're not quite done with our review of the just concluded NBA elections. And of course, we have on our sister political program also had an opportunity for an up close with the president-elect, Mrs. Oyinkansola Badejo Okunsoya, who polled 47.1% of the votes. That's exactly 12,317. But there are also other contestants in that election. Lateef Omoyemi Akongbe, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, polled 7,903 votes. That's 30% of the votes. And Mr. Akongbe, SAN joins us now on the program to talk more about the NBA elections. He is live virtually for us this morning. Mr. Lateef Omoyemi Akongbe, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Good morning, sir. Welcome to the morning brief.
Thank you very much. Good morning. It's a pleasure being with you this morning.
It's a pleasure to have you. Now, the dust raised by that election is yet to settle, with so many contentions coming especially from those who were unable to participate in the election. There were concerns about inability to access the portal. We have also taken a peep into your statement. You talked about your inability to vote and how it was marred by irregularities. Talk to us about that process more extensively now that we have you live.
Thank you very much. The process is one that I reckon that is unavoidable. And it's unavoidable because of the way we've set up the entire electoral process. Right from the get-go, some of us have raised our concerns about the service provider that was engaged by the electoral body. The chief concern was the fact that this service provider is a sole proprietor that nobody knows anything about. One, two is that there is no proven record of having done an election of this magnitude or any other election for that matter. Now, thirdly, is the fact that this is a company that I call a fly-by-the-night company, a company that moved from inactive when it was bidding for the engagement to become active just a few hours before appointment. So what we had was that this company had never filed a return at the CAC for 6 years, and only went to regularize its filing just a few hours before the appointment. And for me, that raised a lot of red flag. And it must raise red flag, to any member of society who has been following the NBA election over the last 3 cycles of election. In the last 3 cycles of election, we haven't had an election where after the election, there hasn't been either the matter ends up in court or there's allegation of malpractice and irregularities. And we're saying there's trust deficit. Let's get things right. The proper thing to do is that rather than use this so-called company, that moved from being inactive, and if you are doing your due diligence as a constitution of the NBA demands that you do, all this would have been revealed. Then you would find you look at a proper company. We then suggested at different levels of conversation that the proper thing to do is, why don't you get 2 credible or reputable firms, foreign firms, that have done this over the years, that have a reputation for doing or conducting proper elections, and get 2 of the big 4 accounting firms in Nigeria as auditors to audit the entire process, pre and post, audit the data that will be used, clean up the data, and ensure that the infrastructure is such that can withstand the entire process. All of this fell, to deaf ears. The president of the bar was not ready. AFAM was not ready to do all of this. Now, I even suggested, because of the previous election, I suggested that the proper way to ensure credibility of this process is that let us use the NIN, that every single Nigerian that has a telephone has an NIN. Use the NIN as an authenticator or as an identificator to identify individuals before they go on the platform and vote. But the system, the process you're suggesting, which is the Supreme Court numbers of lawyers, is very porous. It's not difficult for you to get Supreme Court numbers of lawyers. And OTPs can either be intercepted, or there could be network issues that wouldn't let OTP drop in people's telephones. Therefore, use a unique identificator, which is the NIN, and everybody can, from the comfort of their home, be it on email or on telephone, be able to vote. This will bring credibility to the process.
So are you alleging irregularities? Are you alleging malpractice? And if you are, is it against the leadership of the NBA in line with the president-elect?
Well, begin with, I put it down to incompetence. Incompetence on the part of the electoral body. Why do I say that? The moment we were supposed to do a test run, I don't think a test run was done. So the moment the process commenced at 12 midnight, within 15 minutes, the system went down. It never came back up until 7:35 in the morning. And the simple excuse for that was that there was a cyber attack. Therefore, they had to migrate to another system. And I said, if you had a backup, number one, if you had done a test run, you would have seen all of this, number one. Number two is that if you had a backup, it wouldn't take you that long to be able to switch the backup. If you don't have a backup and you're migrating to a new system, it will take you far longer than 6 hours to build a new one. So what happened? That's as regards to the issue of incompetence. Now, irregularities. Let me speak to that. We all agreed that before the commencement, the technical experts of each candidate will come and inspect the system and the admin and all of that. That, number one, was not done before the election commenced. Two, when they switched back at 7:35, no inspection was done. Our technical experts couldn't even move close to the back end. No communication. Even the cyber attack remains unverified till today. Now, when you look at all of this together, put as a whole, it is very suggestive of what you said. Now, fairness, free and fair election was what we wanted. When the election commenced, on the ballot paper, initially you already see that only picture of one candidate was on the ballot paper. My picture was on the ballot paper. The picture of the other candidate, the second runner-up, was on the ballot paper. His name was not even on the ballot paper to begin with. Then we raised concerns, and by 7:35, this had been addressed. And I'm saying, well, lawyers, how can it be? We thrive. We thrive on fairness as lawyers. We thrive on due process as lawyers. How can you say an election is fair when out of 3 candidates, you have the picture of just one candidate? Did you not see that before we raised the concern? Because I had to raise the concern with the president of the association. I raised the concern with him before it was rectified. Now, equal playing field is what we see all the time. If INEC did that, the NBA will be well in order to raise an objection to that. But we are the one falling short of what is required in any election. So all of this led to the massive disenfranchisement of members. We didn't have a low turnout of voters. What we had was disenfranchisement in an election where 62,000 members couldn't vote. So in terms of the plurality of the people that voted, we had more members out there that couldn't vote than the ones that voted. And the number is so significant that if they had come in, they could have changed the election for any of the candidates.
It will be interesting in the coming weeks and months to see how this will be addressed by the NBA, especially Madam President-elect. So perhaps the question would be, what are the options indeed for you, and perhaps what would be your next line of action? But there are those who are also wondering why these defeats may be a bit so painful. They're suggesting that maybe it's because a woman emerged as NBA president-elect, defeating 2 strong men. So confirm for us if you have congratulated Madam NBA president-elect.
So all along in the campaign, I've always made it clear that our decisions as a professional body that we are should never be on sentiment or gender-based or tribal, or based on tribal sentiments or age and all of that. So I don't even buy to that. For me, the issues we have in the NBA, the challenges bedeviling us, doesn't know gender. Doesn't matter. What we need is someone that has capacity, competence, and character that can take the association back to its pride of place. So for me, I don't see gender, I don't see a tribe, I just see competence. I see competence, that's what I see. So I don't think being a woman has nothing to do with the conversations here. But in terms of what I expect, the least I expected from the president-elect is an acknowledgement of the flawed process. To even speak to it and say, yeah, this and that happened. I couldn't vote as a candidate. Akiporo, SAN, couldn't vote as a candidate. Even the president-elect, from the published list, people are saying her name is not even on the list of the voters that voted. But she has not even said anything about that. Come out and acknowledge that these were the flaws. And it's not perfect. We've had a president in this country who came into power and acknowledged that, yes, we've won, we declared winners. But we acknowledge the fact that the process that brought us in was flawed. What that says to the people is that you've seen that the system is broken and you will fix it. But when you don't acknowledge that the system is broken, you're not going to fix it. These are fundamental issues.
All right, Mr.
These are
Akungbe.
things that members want to know.
So my quick series of questions in one breath will be, has she reached out to you since this election ended? The second part will be, yes, it's a flawed process. I think I listened to her on Sunday with my colleague Sean when she acknowledged that part, but I may be wrong. But if you were the victor in this case, even with the flaws that you've enumerated, because I've interviewed Mr. Kimball as well, he identified these things, would you be saying what you're saying as well? And the third question, if you can forget, I'll remind you, is, has there ever been, because you said about 50-something thousand people could not vote, that means that you are telling us that in every NBA election is 100% voter turnout. Is that what you're saying?
Thank you. So I'll take the three questions. One is whether I've reached out to her or whether she has reached out to me. I think we've reached out to each other, but unfortunately, we have not been able to speak to each other. Yes. She did reach out. I reached out to her first twice. She couldn't speak to me at the time. She reached out to me yesterday. I wasn't available as well. So in terms of that, I would say we've reached out to each other. We've not been able to speak to each other. Okay. That's that. Then your second question about whether the turnout has always been 100%. No. And if you look at my statement, you see, I actually did the statistics of the last 3-4 elections. At the minimum, we've always had nothing less than 56% turnout at the elections. 56% as opposed to what we have currently, which is barely 30%.
Oh dear. Let us see. Can you hear us? All right. So the picture you're seeing there, the three contenders, Mrs. Badijo.
And the difference, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
The difference between those elections and this one.
Please go ahead, please. We can hear you. Okay, Mr. Lateef Akungbe is our guest. Yes, can you hear us now? Yes, please go ahead. We can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
I said that the difference between those elections and this one would be members saying, perhaps I don't want to vote, or members are given the opportunity to vote and they didn't take it. But the difference here is that people were saying, I want to vote. Members were calling at 3 o'clock in the morning that they couldn't vote. 2 senior advocates called me. A female senior advocate called me about 9 p.m. the night before, said she's been trying all day, she couldn't vote. At 6:35 in the morning, another female senior advocate called me that she couldn't vote. So that's the difference. The fact that people saying I've been disenfranchised. A whole class, 2025 class of the NBA couldn't vote. A whole class. That's 13,000 members. They couldn't vote because the NBA didn't allow them. They said, what they needed to vote with was their exam number and not Supreme Court number. But nobody told them that. This announcement was never made to them by this NBA beforehand to say 2025 class, 13,000 of you would vote with your Supreme Court number, your exam number, rather than your Supreme Court number. So you had a whole class of 13,000 members disenfranchised. Only the ones that knew that they could use their exam number were able to vote.
Yeah, my last question, because I asked the questions you want. If you had emerged victor, would this still be your remark?
If I emerged, my position would have been that there should be a rerun, which is what I expect them to say. Rerun because you want to enjoy the mandate of the majority of your members. So because if you look at the figures, even in terms of the votes that came in, which was about 25,000 votes, the margin was such that if you combine my votes with that of the second runner-up, they're actually 50%, 53% of the votes, which means that the majority of people that cast their votes did not prefer you. So when you look at that, it's about the will of the majority. So the question is, and I know that it's simple majority. Once you have more votes than other contenders, you're the winner. But in terms of the morality of it, the implication is that more members did not prefer you at that election. So if I were the winner, one, I will acknowledge the process was flawed, and I would immediately commence conversations around how to, ensure that electoral process in the NBA is reformed, because it needs serious reform. Thirdly, is that a rerun would be an opportunity for you to tell the members that, okay, I want to enjoy the mandate of the majority of our people. I want to know that the will of the majority is what brought me to power. But again, I would expect that the ACMB at the very least will be addressing these issues, but nobody's addressing the issues. That's the concern. The association of the lawyers are supposed to set the standard, gold standard, be at the vanguard of ensuring that democracy is exemplified. We are the ones falling short of it. And I ask the question, in a couple of months from now, the INEC will come to us to come and monitor and observe elections.
Yeah.
What are we going to be monitoring and observing? What is the moral right we have to tell them they're not doing the proper thing when we ourselves are falling short of doing the proper thing? And nobody's speaking about it. Leadership is not saying anything about it. People are carrying on as if it's normal times. It's not. Let us identify the elephant in the room.
Yeah, it's very noble that you say if you were the one, that emerged victorious on this ballot, given the circumstances, you would have called for a run. Some would say something that is very rare in these parts. But we have also listened to the president-elect, Madam Badegjo Kusonye, and she has committed, to an audit of the election process, as well as prioritizing unifying the NBA, against the backdrop of these issues. And I want to piggyback on some of the issues that brought us here in the first place, because there were concerns about, the agenda by Egbe Amofio Dudua. The NBA kicked against the letter written by the Attorney General of the Federation to the NBA over this election that has just been held. Some said that you were the preferred candidate of Egbe Amofio Dudua. And then in spite of all of that zoning, subjects that divided the association ahead of this election, that the president-elect still emerged victorious by a wide margin, which was a clear decider of the election. How do you respond to these aspects of the conversation, which I'm sure that you have been listening in on ahead of and after the election?
Well, let me correct this straight away. I am not the candidate of the Egbe Amofio Dudua. Mr. Kimboro SAN is the endorsed candidate of the Egbe Amofio Dudua. As a matter of fact, I would like you to know that I'm actually the one that is independent candidate, not backed by any of the establishments. I mean, you would have heard the conversation one now where the NBA president said he can't be neutral as a candidate, and that machinery was supporting the president-elect, where the Egbe Amofio was supporting the other candidates. So I actually stood in the middle as a neutral and independent candidate till today. So I'm not the candidate. I don't agree with that. I can only speak, about my own race. But what I think is that I think the president-elect has a lot to do in terms of unifying the entire system, ensuring that things, NBA is brought together as a single united body that is clear in its purpose and modern in its method of delivering real value to every lawyer in Nigeria, regardless of where you practice. As long as a lawyer, the NBA should work for you. And she has a lot to do, with that. And the way she can start to do that is get people who have things to offer, to come on board, regardless of your political affiliations. Look for merit and credible people who can make a difference in the NBA, number one. Number two, and I will commend her if she can ensure that a post-audit, not a report that is being issued now, the database, the primary source can reveal all the digital footprints, who went in where, who did what. If she does that, she would have commenced her administration in a way that nobody had done in the past. So she'll be setting a huge record that would be the beginning of writing her name in gold. I implore her, I urge her, that even without anything, and she's committed to that in the past, and I'm taking her up on that, to ensure that there's an independent audit, post-audit of the database, the back end. If she does that, oh, she would have written her name in gold. And I hope she stands by that. She's made that commitment to me in person, in a one-on-one conversation. She's made it openly. And I urge her, and I'm calling on her to ensure that a post-audit of the database, of the back end, is conducted. If she does that, tell you, she would have gone a long way in unifying stories that couldn't vote for her. She would have done a lot to bring them together.
Maybe just a yes or no question. I asked you before about your next line of action. Are you headed for the courts?
No, I am not. No, I am not. I will not.
All right. Thank you indeed.
Because I will not, because I know nothing will come out of it.
All right.
So you do not trust? You do not trust the courts as a lawyer?
Mr. Akongwe, are you there?
Well, you know the last election, the first runner-up in the last election is still in court, and the president is going to be handing over in 4 weeks from now. He's still in court, challenging. Not even the election itself. What is challenging is his right, his constitutional right to do a post-audit. He was denied a post-audit of the database, of the back end. Now, the courts have said, you need the consent of each and every person that voted for you to be able to access the one. He's still in court. Previous ones have been in court, and the president challenging would run entire office whilst they're in court. So if there is anything to go by, I believe going to court would be a waste of my time. I wouldn't even advise my clients in the circumstance to go to court. So why would I do that to myself?
Well, perhaps because of the bureaucracy of the justice system, which itself is an issue, we could be, trite to accept your reason for not going to court. But because you do not trust the justice system, well, we'll be wondering as a lawyer why you wouldn't trust the justice system itself. But we look forward really to, in the future, an NBA election that is devoid of this crisis of confidence and legitimacy issues and divisions, such that we can tell a better story as far as the NBA election is concerned, especially because, you yourself describe lawyers as those who thrive on fairness, and equity because of the nature of the profession. We must thank you very much for coming on the program. We've been talking with Mr. Lateef Akongwe, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, and of course, first runner-up in the just concluded NBA elections. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And from here, we'll take a moment. We're not quite done yet. There's one more place to stop, and that will be the national economy. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. Let's talk about the economy. In fact, as a matter of fact, the Constitution is divided into chapters. Some of my favorite part has to do with Chapter 4 that has to do with rights, and then Chapter 2 that has to do with objective of state policy, where if you look at Section 16, it pandered towards a welfare state. But we run a neoliberal capitalist economy, but that's not a big conversation. We're going to look at that. But let's talk about what played out at the Monetary Policy Committee meeting yesterday, where all parameters were retained, including the interest rate. Sheridan Teller is an emeritus professor. Professor Sheridan Teller is emeritus professor of economics at the Olabisi Onabanjo University. He's a fellow Nigerian Economic Society and a fellow Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. Prof, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
Yes, I think a generic question would be, were you surprised at the MPC decision retaining all of the parameters, including the interest rate, and how will this impact the economy in the short term?
Well, I was thinking that they will reduce the interest rate, although traditionally they have held this interest rate for long. The interest rate actually, that's the rate at which the central bank will lend to other banks, which means that banks' interest rate will be higher than that interest rate that they have lent. And that means that the cost of borrowing is very, very high, or will be very high for private sector in particular, that normally go to investment. So it is important that we look forward to reducing the interest rate so that the cost of affect the cost of products that the investors are producing. But the central bank decided to leave the thing, believing that high interest rate will reduce money supply in the economy. Believing that the interest rates and the money supply will also affect inflation. That is, inflation will not occur because of a reduction in money supply. And that has always been the case. It's not true, because inflation in Nigeria is more structural than monetary. The monetary aspect of inflation in Nigeria has to do with the central bank itself. You see, we don't have the lower denomination of a naira. So people spend more, they use more of 1,500 and say you want to collect 200. You can't see it. Nowadays, you even may not get 500. So people who are selling, they also upscale their prices towards the use of 500 and 1,000. That's inflationary on its own. So that is the monetary aspect. In the inflation is actually caused by structural issues, and that has to do with a low output in the economy. It has to do with a cost of production coming from power. That is a cost of power in the economy, with the cost of a petrol or diesel or whatever they use in production. It also has to do with this. That's why you see that the food inflation is very high. So the central bank think that monetary problem is the cause of inflation. It's not always so. And that is why I think that they ought to have reduced the MPC to reduce cost of borrowing, which of course will reduce the interest lending to producers, and which of course will also affect their own the prices. So it's important to expect the interest rates to come down, but it didn't happen.
Well, so let's talk about Prof. Just before my colleagues come in. So the cost of borrowing here goes beyond just maybe the people in the private sector or the real sector. It also affects the government itself, because you look at the rates on our T-bills, you look at the rates on our bonds and all the yields and all of this. So my next question will have to do with, how do you think the market is going to respond to this? Because on one hand, it feels like the fiscal authority, in collaboration or indirectly in collaboration with the monetary authority, is very aggressive with FX creation to balance, what do you call it now, FX, in the FX market. And they've been quite successful at that, even though it's high. But how will this affect the real sector itself in the short term?
Well, the interest rate, high interest rate, like I said, affects cost of borrowing. And cost of borrowing has to do with a real sector, that is production. So the production is constrained by, one, inability of the private sector to borrow a lot of money because of the high cost itself. It also affects the production of goods itself, because if they don't have enough credit, of course, they have that kind of problem. The fact that if they are not producing adequately, they will be constrained to output, and that simply means that people will not be able to buy at the high cost, because the larger the amount of goods that you produce, the lower the unit cost. So if they don't have enough credit, that is, producers don't have enough credit, they cannot expand their businesses. And when they don't expand their business, unit cost will be very high. So the selling cost will also be high. So the interest rate coming down, and therefore giving ability of the banks to be able to give credit to the private sector will expand their businesses. It will also lead to employment, but that is not what we are having. And that is why the constraint to output in the real sector affect the price on its own. And that's why I say that the relief could have come from the monetary sector by reducing the interest rate, because the structural problems are there and they cannot reach them away. Even the foreign exchange itself is very high. And because it's very high, it creates a serious problem for the economy itself, because when the government actually devalued the currency massively, the prices went up. And that is why the cost of part of the cost of production that affected production itself. So government ought to have been able to reduce or to appreciate the exchange rate itself, but they have not been able to do that. That massive devaluation actually affected production. Many businesses had to close down, but government was interested in getting revenue, and that is what the problem that we are having.
Prof, at the 13th Annual Central Banking Awards held in London, the Central Bank of Nigeria, that's the country's apex bank, received the award of the Central Bank of the Year in 2026, and our CBN Governor Olaimi Cardoso was there to receive that award. So it looks like the global community think, you know what, we're doing well. The CBN is doing well. So I want you to perhaps highlight some of those things you perhaps would think the CBN is doing well, and then why does it not translate to the average Nigerian acknowledging these efforts? We've said, oh, the macroeconomics, things look really good and sweet, but the micro is where it seems to be biting really hard on the average Nigerian household.
Yes, you see, since they came in, they have been able to mobilize, in conjunction with the fiscal side, mobilize funds, be able to stabilize you can say we stabilize the exchange rate, but at what rate, that's a different thing entirely. They also have been able to clear the issue of central bank financing of a government budget, which was very bad. It was part of what created. So they have been able to do a lot of positive things. What we are talking about really is now looking at domestic economy in terms of production, and that is where we have a problem. We have high interest rates, which is part of what is causing inflation. So it's not as if they have really done well in terms of stabilizing the economy in conjunction with the fiscal policy side, that's the Ministry of Finance and other ministries. So to that extent, of course, they can be given the credit. Of course, we know that there is also politics in all these things. The World Bank wants them to harmonize the exchange rate. They have been able to do that at some cost, of course, to the economy. But it's good that they have been able to do that because they have been able to reduce some inefficiencies in the foreign exchange system, as it were. So it's not as if they have not done positive things. It's not as if they have not been able to achieve some good things. The only thing that we are talking about is about maintaining that high interest rate. Also has effect on the private sector, as well as the economy itself being able to move from consumption to. So the central bank role in that sense has to do with maintaining this rigid rates of 28%, because it means that the banks will lend over and above that particular rate. Which business are you going to do to have a profit over and above that 30% interest rate? And that's the important thing that we are talking about. It's not allowing money to flow. It's not allowing businesses to have more credits to be able to expand their businesses. That's what we are saying. So it's not as if they have not done well over, when we are talking of the macro level. The macro level we are talking about is how do these things affect and that is very important. That's why we say we cannot be talking of GDP. We have to talk of employment. We have to talk of increase in reduction in inflation itself, because those are the things that affect the household. So generally, if, of course, we were aware that the governor was awarded the...
Yeah, and so some would say... Yeah, and so some would say, you know, perhaps another yardstick for measuring the performance of the CBN would be the impact of its work of regulating the banking system in the country on the real sector, which, you know, should be thriving, but can it thrive beneath the weight of the 26.5% interest rate? But you also touched on the fiscal side, which is what I want to explore, and have you talk about the revenue challenge that we may be having in terms of fiscal responsibility. And I want to highlight a number of reports. First of all, the World Bank has this year drawn attention to complexities in budget structures and delays that weaken financial reporting and transparency, specifically pointing out discrepancy in Nigeria's 2026 budget, identifying 8.8 trillion naira in government expenditure that are extra budgetary. The IMF has doubled down on this. I'll just cite maybe two more. The former vice president and candidate of the ADC has exposed 12.8 trillion naira allocation allegedly hidden under this government's budget, claiming that they're concealed under the service-wide vote. We could also talk about how a fake agency found its way into the 2026 budget and was able to secure a line item. I'd like you to speak to all of this under one administration, in the same government where there are concerns of budget overlap and contractors not getting, you know, their allocation for jobs that they have duly performed. We could go on and on. How does this impact on what should be the local economy if, you know, these extra budgetary spendings have found their way really to priorities that they should go to? So what are we missing out? What's the local economy missing out as a result of these items, these concerns raised on the budget? Mr. Sheriff Din.
In the last 3-4 years, have not been actually having an appropriate impact on the citizen, because one large proportion of that budget is spent servicing and paying and repaying debt, very big debt that we have, all sorts of loans that we have actually committed to. Secondly, the government itself has not been looking at the budget or even using the budget at all. That's why you have all this overlap. The budget for 2024 was not implemented for a long time. It was not even approved in time. So it was then delayed for implementation. The 2025, almost towards the end of the year, that's when we started talking about 2025. But so the government is maybe having budget for having its sake. It's not running the budget as it were. All those hidden things that we are talking about, they are there, actually. But the fact remains that those budgets are not even implemented. The government just runs the economy on its own whims and caprices. That's why you can run a whole year without implementing the budget itself. And when they are even running the budget, the capital aspects of the budget are usually not run. You know, the capital has to do with that's what have impact on the economy itself, because the recurrent expenditures like paying salary and all those things, which are normal day-to-day things. But the capital is where you have new projects that will also generate employment, even from the public sector. So there's no budget discipline in this government in the last 3 or 4 years. That's why you have this. We don't even know when this 2026 budget, whether it's being run now, whether it's going to start running in December. So nobody seems to care in the government circle about running the budget as it should be. what is important that let us pay salaries, let us pay emolument, let us make sure the politicians are happy and all that. Because I cannot imagine, with all the money that has come in from revenue, that they cannot pay contractors. All those things affect the economy itself, because you know how many people are tied to contractors. So if they don't have money, how do they spend? People don't know, the government seems not to know that there's need for money to flow in the economy. Because when money does not flow, it also affects production. And when production is affected, definitely it's going to affect employment. So government has to, there should be some discipline in budgeting. Now we are half of the year. We don't know whether the budget for 2026 is being implemented now. And that has also always been the trend. So even when we talk of this budget, we have the large gap in the budget deficit. That is created in order to be able to accommodate the issue of debt. Oh, the gap, the deficit is huge. Therefore, we must have debt. And so we go for loan. Those loans, some of those loans have to have been repaying themselves by now. So you can't be talking of money that we generate from oil and other non-oil use that to pay all the debts.
All right, Prof.
So paying debt itself is a big problem, and so that is why the economy is not moving forward, and that's why employment is not, output is not moving forward. Employment is also not generated because the government is not talking of budget. They are not talking of output. Yes. They are not talking of employment.
Yeah, Prof. I think what is required the most from what you've said is transparency, because I know there was a repeal and reenactment. The lawmakers were complaining that the capital component of the 2025 budget is still being implemented. They had to shift it to September, and that's just 30% that they are still trying to implement. The Minister of Finance, the new gentleman, Taiwo Yedele, was talking about the need to borrow because even if they exceeded target in terms of their projection, there are still gaps to fill. So there's a lot to explain, and the issue about unaccounted for, so I'm sure someday we'll get them to, explain these things for some people who are still confused about how it works. But we must thank you so much, Prof. Sheridan Teller, Professor Sheridan Teller is an emeritus professor of economics at Olabisi Onabanjo University, fellow of the Nigerian Economic Society and fellow Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Nice being here.
And yes, just before we go, guys, let's take a look at some of the things that people are talking about. I don't know where the rumor came from, but apparently some people were saying that the Minister of Defense, General Christopher Musa, had resigned. But this is his response to that speculation. I was thinking that was ready, but I think he had a meeting with the president.
Yeah.
He had gone to brief the president. So on his way out, the reporter did ask him about, we're hearing that, he said, well, I don't know anything about it. As a matter of fact, I may be forced to go to court for the person to... Let's take a listen to him.
Yeah, thank you very much.
We're surprised. We learned you have resigned.
I don't know. I too, I was shocked when I saw that. I don't know where that came from. But, well, you always expect that there'll be people that will not be happy when things are going well. Security situation is improving. Things are getting better. And so for them, it's a sad point, and they will always want to make it look as if it's not so. I'm not going anywhere. I have never discussed. I don't even know who the person who brought that information. But whoever he is, we'll take the legal action against him. I'm sure we'll get him. He will come and explain who gave him such information. But I assure Nigerians that we're fully, you can see I just came back from briefing Mr. President on the current security situation, and he's very happy with us, and now we're going to continue doing well. And I want to seize this opportunity to appreciate Nigerians for all the support. The support has been massive, and you can see the changes, and that's where we say to defeat the terrorists and the bandits is a whole of society approach, and now Nigerians are key into it, and things are getting better, and they will continue to improve.
Well, yes, he's transitioned very smoothly from a general to a politician.
He said he has not joined politics, but he's around them.
Oh, but he said on national television that he has obtained the membership card of the All Progressives Congress.
Oh, he has? Okay,
so he's a member of the APC, and he's going to campaign for Mr. President. So
he doesn't have a choice.
We have our General Christopher Musa going to be with us for a very long time to come. He's not going anywhere anytime soon. But what is the value of a government appointment? Well, a certain commissioner from Delta State gives us an insight after taking the oath of office administered by the governor. Let's take a look.
For me, I like Sheriff Oborowe's suits. That's what I'm interested.
If memory serves,
tears of joy, or
if memory serves me right, I believe at the time that Governor Sheriff Oborowe himself was nominated as the candidate for the PDP at the time, he knelt in appreciation to former Governor Ifeanyi Okowa. If we went to the archives, I'm sure we can elicit that. So is that a trend in Delta State?
Yeah, there's even a picture of my governor, Umar, kneeling before Odom Emmanuel. So sometimes just like appreciation, maybe they didn't see it coming, you know, we can interpret it. Others will say, his service is not servitude. So we leave that to the public, guys.
So some will say, I mean, we're Nigerians. We believe so much in our culture, you know.
Courtesy. We're totally out of time, guys.
Well, that's the show, everyone. We're back again tomorrow. Thanks indeed for your time and company. I am Kelly Egiga.
Sarah Zeli is up next, so stay with Channels Television. I am Bukola Kulka.
And I'm Jeffrey Uzama. Bye-bye.